Hi, I'm Karan Thapar. Over the last few years, I hope you've been watching my program, The Interview on the Wire. During that period, I've interviewed doctors, politicians, businessmen, scientists, authors, and even the occasional Nobel laureate. For me, it's been exciting. I hope it's been enjoyable for you. But these, as you know, are tough times, and if this program is going to remain bold, independent, and sometimes even defiant, then I think we need your support. At the end of the day, it's a truism, but editorial independence is best defended by the viewers. So if you would like this program to remain the way it is, forthright, outspoken, and interesting, then would you consider supporting us? All you have to do is to click on the description at the bottom. But more than anything else, I hope you will continue to watch the interview. Your viewership means an awful lot to me. Hello and welcome to a special interview for The Wire. Today we touch on a subject that is fundamental to our 200 million Muslim brothers and sisters. What is it like to be a Muslim in a Hindu-dominant country? That is the subject of a book that has recently been released. Here it is. It's called Being Muslim in Hindu India, A Critical View. Its author, Ziya Us Salam, is my guest today. Ziya Salam, the title of your book is Being Muslim in Hindu India. But Muslims have been living in Hindu India since they first came in the 8th century AD, long before the Sultanate period, long before the Mughal Empire. So let me instead talk about what it's like to be Muslim in Modi's India. That's when the big change happened. Can you start by answering that question? What is it like to be a Muslim in Narendra Modi's India?
I guess it's difficult. Every day is challenging, and but I do differ from you when you call it Modi's India, because irrespective of all the adversities, all the challenges, I do believe it's our India, and one day we can restore our country to its glory. But as of now, every morning begins with news of lynching, or maybe some madrasa being attacked, some masjid being attacked. If nothing else, then our food habits are questioned. For a minute, I invite you to just put yourself into my shoes and imagine that I am a common Muslim. I have a street side stall selling biryani, or I repair cars and bikes. I go to masjid and I want to send my children to school. Now, I cannot earn my livelihood in many parts of the country, say in UP, for at least 20 days this year, for 80 days in a year, if I am into meat business, because there are 18 days of Navratra every year when people are not allowed to to sell meat or to buy meat on the roads of Kavariyas. Similarly, there was this year, the month of Savan or Shravan, extended to 59 days. So for 59 days, people were not allowed to sell meat on the route of Kavariyas in UP. Then you think of the same man trying to send his children to school so that become more educated and better and more responsible citizens of our country. And then we have this case of the Muzaffarnagar teacher Tyagi, who was bashing up the child merely because he was a Muslim. Or we have this case of Gujarat school where a Muslim girl had topped in her class, but she was not given her topper certificate on stage. Instead, the certificate was given to the girl who had come second in the class. The Muslim girl was assured that you will be given your certificate in the classroom, but not in the school assembly. So, if a Muslim does well, he cannot be felicitated in public. If he just wants to seek education, he is discouraged, rather physically his limitations are violated. And if I want to earn my livelihood through meat or something like that, and we know about the cases of lynching since 2015 when Akhlaq was the first victim, there is no guarantee of livelihood, there is no guarantee of right to worship, There's no guarantee of right to education. There's no guarantee of right to wear the clothes I want. What kind of liberty do I have in Mudi's India today?
I heard what you said about how the selling of meat, the selling of beef in particular, I imagine is banned on routes that Kanwarias take. How during the month of Savan, which this year lasted for 59 days, which is an exceptional 2-month period, the selling of meat was banned. Tell me, are there similar restrictions on the selling of pork in areas where Muslims have masjids, in areas where Muslims live? One would imagine in a secular country that would be the case as well, but does it exist?
It doesn't. Like, see, there is this month of Ramzan every year. For 30 days, there are millions of practicing Muslims who observe fast from dawn to dusk. But have you come across a single instance where people have been told, do not eat here, Muslims live here, or do not do, McDonald cannot do business there, or KFC cannot do business there, or any street side vendor has been asked to shut his shop? It's just majoritarianism. And at another level, it is just gundaism supported by the ruling party, that if I cannot eat something, you also cannot. Whereas it goes against all norms and all laws of our constitution. If you do not have the liberty to eat what you want, to study where you want to worship where you want to pick up a vocation you want to, are you really living as an equal citizen of India today?
Now, the truth, Zia, is that the situation for Muslims has steadily, and I would add considerably, got worse in the 9 years since Mr. Modi first came to power in 2014. You write, and I'm quoting from your book, there was a 30% increase in hate crimes against Muslims between 2014 and 2017. Then there was an exponential rise of such crimes after Modi won a second term as Prime Minister in 2019. Religious based hate crimes, which surged nearly 30% in 2014-17, then doubled since his landslide re election in 2019, culminating with the murder of more than 50 Muslims over the course of 6 bloody days in New Delhi between February the 23rd and February the 29th, 2020. What's your personal explanation for this sharp increase in crimes against Muslims in the last 9 years under Narendra Modi?
See, it's just a tacit acceptance that a common Muslim has to be at the receiving end of majoritarian politics. People at the street level are encouraged to violate all norms when it comes to Muslims. I'll begin with the case of Akhlaq in 2015. There was this allegation that he had slaughtered a calf to be precise, and were these goons, vandals, raising slogans of Jai Shri Ram, who entered his house at night, dragged him out of the bedroom to the public square, and then beat him up with everything they could lay their hands on. When finally he died, and when finally his body was given for last rites to the family, the police did not deem it proper to first inquire who was behind the killing. And why was his personal space violated? Who entered his house at night without any permission? Instead, the police raided the refrigerator of Akhlaq to find out if the meat in his freezer was chicken or mutton or beef. What kind of a law is that? You can get away with killing of a Muslim, and the police is not concerned about the life of an innocent citizen of India lost over there. But if the meat he was consuming was beef or mutton or chicken, and it continued all along. We had this case of Pehlu Khan in Rajasthan, where initially an FIR was also filed against Pehlu Khan, the deceased, not only against the attackers. It continued to 2019. Wherever a Muslim was lynched, it was inevitably preceded by an allegation of cow slaughter. With 2019, even that fig leaf was done away with, and any person who looked like a Muslim was vulnerable to being attacked by these Hindutva goons. In many cases, where Muslim men did not look like a Muslim, they were asked to lower their trousers so that the Hindutva mob could prey on them. I personally had this experience. I went to Northeast Delhi when the city was, so to say, on fire on maybe the third day of communal violence. I had reached up to Gopalpuri area, and there was a policeman over there. And at that time, I had a more luxuriant beard. So he asked me in Hindi, "Aap kahan ja rahe hain?" So I said, "I'm just going up to Shiv Vihar and so on." Then he said, "All that I can guarantee for your safety is 200 meters from here." I said, "Why not further on?" He very smartly and straightforward replied, "You have a beard." Now, if a Muslim who seeks protection of police and a journalist on top of that is not guaranteed that, you can imagine the plight of the common Muslim. It just goes on everywhere.
Some of the things that have actually happened to Muslims are not just unspeakable, they are horrible, unreadable crimes. I know it's invidious to quote any one single crime, but I am determined to do that. You write in your book of an incident that happened to a young man in Jharkhand in 2019. I'm going to quote you. You say, the rampaging mob tied him to a lamppost and beat him with anything that was on hand, from iron rods to batons, tires, and belts. The man bled from his head, hands, and face. His legs were swollen, many of the bones were broken, and his hands were bleeding. He could barely stand. His crime, you ask? He was a Muslim in New India. Is this representative of the sort of things that happen fairly frequently? I know that sounds like an ignorant and silly question, but there are many in the audience who will ask themselves that. Is this representative of what happens to Muslims almost every day?
It does happen to Muslims on almost not every day, but you can say every other day or something like that. And the worst thing is, it the people who are responsible for these killings are never meted out punishment. The people who kill Muslims these days feel emboldened to record the killing as an accomplishment and put it up on social media. We had cases of killings in the past also, irrespective of the communities. There were Muslims killed, there were Hindus killed, but wherever there was any assailant, he would kill and try to run away from the site, trying not to leave any, so to say, evidence behind. What has changed after 2015 is these people kill and then they make a recording of that and put it up on social media because they are confident that the police will not come after them, and they have their political masters who will stand up for them. You are talking of a Jharkhand, and I'll tell you this case of Alimuddin Ansari. He was about to die, he was bleeding badly, his bones were broken, and the attackers forced him to look up into the camera when they were recording the event. It was like he was their shield, he was the trophy the Hindutva goons had laid their hands on, and they were very happily put it up on social media. They sent it on WhatsApp, and in fact it was his video which reached his son, his teenage son, like any other video on WhatsApp, and the son saw that and he was horrified that this time the man who was being killed was his father.
Let me ask you a personal question, and I do it with a certain amount of hesitation, but I'm doing it deliberately nonetheless. As I look at you, you're a middle class, educated Muslim. You live in a comfortable home. What is the worst that has personally happened to you?
Ah, I'll give you two examples for that. Back in 1992, when I was in college, the Vishwa Hindu Parishad and Bajrang Dal people used to hold out marches and rallies almost every evening in the middle class localities of Noida. I live in Noida. And they would raise their favorite slogans like मुसलमान के दो स्थान कब्रिस्तान या पाकिस्तान हिंदुस्तान में रहना है तो वंदे मातरम कहना है and all those kind of things. When the Babri Masjid was demolished on December 6, 1992, a Hindu family who had obviously been forced to leave Pakistan in 1947 from Peshawar. They used to live in our neighborhood, and the matriarch of their family came to our house and insisted that we shift to their house for our safety. When we declined, saying we are okay, we are comfort, if we are not comfortable, we feel that we should be at home only. She insisted on sleeping at our place, saying none of you will open the door if somebody rings the doorbell at night. I'll open the door. so that we all stay protected. That was the kind of support we got in 1992 from our neighbors. They stood up for us like brothers. But when something similar happened in 2020, when Narendra Modi had gone to Ayodhya for Bhumi Pujan, I was still in Noida at that time. At that time, and that was we must understand it was during the COVID lockdown period, or when the lockdown had just about started being lifted. No neighbor came to my house to extend any support, any solidarity that these things are political or these things happen, but we will stay together as brothers. Instead, there was a march past, so to say, for a couple of hours in the colony. People just kept taking rounds of the colony with their bandanas, saffron flags, trishuls, and raising all kinds of slogans. Not one of them deemed it fit to come over to my place or to any Muslim in the colony and say, okay, we are with you. It is just
You know,
that we were left to ourselves.
the amazing thing is that the two most powerful people in the country, Narendra Modi and Amit Shah, usually have absolutely nothing to say about what happens to Muslims. And I mean absolutely nothing. You write, and
Have
I'm
you
quoting
seen
from your
Narendra
book.
Modi tweeting about any lynching incident of Muslims? Condemning any lynching incident, or going to the house of any victim, or the home minister going to the house of any victim, or tweeting about it, or even condemning it in press? Nowhere.
In the very early years of his prime minister, he did once speak about the treatment of Christians, but I think he only did it once. He's never done it again. And thereafter, no matter what has happened to Christians, he's been silent. But let's come back to Muslims. I'm going to quote from your book. You say, the prime minister felt it unnecessary to talk or tweet about any of these. His customary silence spoke eloquently. The Home Minister of India did not react to the debasement of the dignity of Muslims nor to the threat to their lives. And the worst part, though I suppose it's not surprising, is the media too stayed silent. This is a deliberate conspiracy of silence, isn't it? And beyond that conspiracy of silence, it's an attempt by the government to show through its silence this is acceptable, this is tolerable, we will not object, we will not stop you. That is the silent message going across. Or am I mistaken?
No, I agree with you completely. And it's not just about lynching where the Prime Minister has not tweeted or condemned the crime. We saw what happened in the case of Bilqis in Gujarat when her convicted gang rapists were released on bail. They were garlanded, and they were people there ready with a box of sweets, and then they were taken to the offices of many right-wing organizations. A society which is so acceptable of crime against Muslims, even convicted gang rapists, a person who had not only raped a woman but a pregnant woman, killed her 3-year-old baby, killed her sister, killed her mother, and he had been convicted by no less a court than the Supreme Court of India. And he was released, and then he was treated almost like a victor, like a winner, as if he had won some Olympic medal for India. When you garland rapists and murderers, it's a condemnation not just of the government but of the society in the times we are living in. Closer to Delhi, rather in Delhi, we had this sad spectacle of Pinky Chaudhary, who a right-wing self-styled leader who had raised the slogan at Jantar Mantar barely a kilometer from our parliament, जब मुल्ले काटे जाएंगे जय श्री राम चिल्लाएंगे. He was to be arrested, and despite the fact that he is in the NCR, he could not be arrested for about a month. Finally, he, so to say, surrendered to the police. When he surrendered to the police allowed him to lead a march with his followers and with others, and his followers raised him on their shoulders, garlanded him, again raising all the provocative slogans. When he finally arrived at the police station, it was only then that he got down from the shoulders of his admirers and followers while the policemen looked on. You can get away with anything when you are right-wing.
The truth is, we live in a society where it's not surprising that politicians behave immorally and unethically. We're not surprised when they do that. But what is perhaps more disillusioning is the response from the judiciary. You point out in your book that in 2020, when a minister chanted Desh ke gaddaron ko and encouraged the crowd to respond with the reply Goli maro salon ko, a judge of the Delhi High Court, Justice Chandradhari Singh, actually had the gall to say, if you're saying something with a smile, then there's no criminality. If you're saying something offensively, then criminality. Tell me, in your personal opinion, how reflective of the judiciary is that? Is this a one off? Is Justice Chandradhari Singh unique and isolated and just one example? Or is he representative of a wider malaise?
If he was not representative of the wider malaise, then he would have been brought to task. If not then maybe later the Supreme Court could have taken suo motu action or something like that. Again, the fact is there is either active or silent abatement towards othering of Muslims, towards violating their life, their dignity, their livelihood. Be it the political parties, and I'm not referring to the BJP alone, be it the political parties or our media or our judiciary, who takes action. Every other day, Yati Nursing Anand on the doorstep of Delhi and earlier at the Press Club of India in New Delhi issued threats against Muslims, genocidal calls against Muslims, defamed the Prophet. Has he been put in jail for it? I'm asking you. It's been 3 years or more since he first made that call, and he has repeated that call subsequently in Haridwar and a number of other places. He is out free. Umar Khalid is in jail. Because if you raise your voice against the government, then you are in danger. When you speak out against Muslims, issue death threats, even genocidal calls, you are relatively safe.
What you're saying is that we as a society, the entire country, probably without any real exception, except for a few minorities, is complicit. Complicit either because we do it, or complicit because the majority allow it to happen and don't object, and complicit because very, very few stand up and criticize. At whatever level of complicity, that complicity applies to all of us.
Yeah, I guess so. Anybody who keeps quiet at such a time or who stays neutral is guilty of facilitating genocide. When you see an innocent man being killed or a woman being violated, it's important that you speak up for the victim. When you don't speak up for the victim, instead you indulge in whataboutery. Oh, this is what Alauddin Khilji did, this is what Aurangzeb did, or this is what has happened in Bangladesh, or this is what has happened in Pakistan. Then you are abetting that kind of crime, and in other ways, not just othering Muslims, but also leading our country to a precipice of no return.
Let's, against this background, Zia, broaden our discussion. The truth is that in whatever sphere of life you look at, Muslim representation is way below the proportion of the population that they represent. I'm citing now from Akar Patel's book, Our Hindu Rashtra. He points out that Muslims are 15% of the population, 14.43 to be precise, but only 4.9% of state and central government employees, 4.6% of the paramilitary services, 3.2% of the IAS, IFS, and IPS, and perhaps as low as 1% of the army. In other words, even after 76 years of independence, Muslims have not got their just desert and just position right across public life in India.
Absolutely, I agree. Today, as you rightly pointed out, and as Sachar Committee had also said back in 2006, the representation of Muslims in civil services at that time was just 4%. Even today, it is not more than 5%. But the thing which really concerns me today, and which is in many ways alarming, the community has been trying to find ways of rising up in social and economic sphere on its own. As you understand, there is no benefit of reservation for Muslims. Even the poorest of Muslims or the so called Pasmanda Muslims, no matter what Narendra Modi says, about Sneh Yatra and everything for Pasmanda Muslims, they do not get any benefit of reservation. Under the circumstances, the community funds the education of the poor, funds the education of the deserving, trains them to be good public servants, crack an open examination on merit without asking for any kind of support from the government or anywhere else. And when these boys and girls make it to civil services on the basis of their hard work, their merit, and the support they get from some well wishers of the community, we have people like Suresh Chavanke who call it Jamia Jihad. Just because Jamia Millia Islamia, a central university, has a residential program for students desirous of taking the UPSC exam. And these people lodged a case against Zakat Foundation of India. Now, Zakat Foundation of India has been working to uplift the community for last 27, 28 years. And it has also been given training to Muslim boys and girls to crack the civil services exams. In 2020, I suppose 42 or 45 Muslims had made it to civil services, 42, which was a sharp increase from 2019. But one must understand when 28 Muslims had made it to civil services, but one must understand that all these boys and girls had made it on their merit, not because of any reservation or any such thing. Still, Sudarshan Channel deemed it appropriate to run a show called Jamia Ke Jihadi and that kind of stuff. It seems that even when the community is taking positive steps towards assimilation in the national mainstream and contribute to the development of the country as responsible citizens of India, there are people who will raise a finger of suspicion no matter what.
In fact, even in an area like politics, where people aspire from all different walks of life, where the poorest can become the most influential, Muslims once again are getting squeezed out. In proportionate terms, they should have 74 seats in the Lok Sabha, they have only 27. India does not have a Muslim chief minister in any of its 28 states. In 15, I'm told there is no Muslim minister. In 10, there is just one, usually in charge of minority affairs. So even in politics, where aspirants look to improve their lives and fulfill their ambitions, Muslims are once again being squeezed out.
Absolutely, I agree with you completely. Today, for the first time since 1947, we have a central government which does not have a Muslim in the cabinet. It has never happened in India. There were Muslims in the cabinet of Atal Bihari Vajpayee also, and there were Muslims in all the other governments prior to this current government. But it's not just the BJP which is not giving tickets to Muslims. Is the other parties also which have reduced the number of tickets offered to a Muslim. You see the Congress or the Samajwadi or the BRS who gives tickets to a Muslim as many tickets as they would say in 2007 or 2012. BRS did not give a single ticket to a Muslim in Telangana elections. How different was it from the BJP in Rajasthan or the BJP in Telangana itself? It's easy to point a finger at the BJP. The fact is, other parties have also adopted the Hindutva style of politics, wherein minorities in general and Muslims in particular are considered extra baggage.
You're making a very fair point that it's not just the BJP alone that keeps an arm's distance from Muslims and doesn't field them as candidates. Other political parties have started doing it, sometimes to the same extent, sometimes not even fielding a single candidate, as you pointed to BRS. But let's just take the BJP as an example because it is, I still think, the most egregious of the lot. Neither in 2014 nor in 2019 did the BJP have a single Muslim Lok Sabha MP, and at the moment it doesn't even have a Rajya Sabha MP either. And in Karnataka and UP, it doesn't have a Muslim MLA, even though Muslims represent 13 and 19% of the population, respectively, in those states. In fact, in Gujarat, and I keep citing this example in interviews because it's so horrifying. In Gujarat, with a Muslim population of just under 10%, the BJP hasn't fielded a Muslim candidate in any election, Lok Sabha or Vidhan Sabha, since 1998. That is 25 years, a quarter century. That is the extent to which the ruling party has begun to boast.
See what the
Eshwara,
BJP is
former
doing.
Deputy Chief Minister of Karnataka, has gone on record this year to say we don't need Muslim votes. And that's a former Deputy Chief Minister of Karnataka formally saying this.
Well, we have the current formal Chief Minister of Assam formally saying it now. Hemant Biswa Sarma has said it more than once. We do not need Muslim votes. We will not go to the areas where Muslims live to seek their votes. It has never happened in the history of India. At the time of elections, every community, every voter is supposed to be the king. And all the politicians, no matter how rogue they might be, they go to each and every area seeking the vote of every individual. It's for the first time now from a public platform, BJP politicians have started saying we do not need the Muslim vote. First, the BJP stopped giving tickets to Muslims, saying they do not have a chance of winning. The winnability factor was put forward in public domain. Then, when the number of tickets had either disappeared completely or diminished rapidly, then there was reconstitution of constituencies, as we saw in Assam. In Assam, until this year, there were 29 seats where Muslim vote was crucial. But after the latest delimitation exercise, only 22 seats are left where Muslim vote is crucial in Assam. But we should not see it in isolation as a case happening after 2014 or 19. What the BJP is doing today is essentially a fulfillment of the dream of MS Golwalkar, living up to what he had said about the minorities in India, that they can live here enjoying no rights, no political rights, no right to equality, no right to seek education or any such thing, only at the sufferance of the majority community. The minorities, according to him, could not build their own institutions to protect their culture, their religion, or aspire to equality in India. And the BJP is today fulfilling those dreams. When the BJP talks of a madrasa survey in UP, or when the Assam Chief Minister says he wants to get rid of the word madrasa, it speaks eloquently how the party is following in the path showed by Golwalkar. But strangely, the Assam Chief Minister doesn't even know the meaning of the madrasa when he talks of obliterating madrasa and starting schools. What is the meaning of madrasa, may I ask him? It's a place where one seeks education. Whether you call it madrasa in Urdu or you call it school or vidyalaya is the same thing.
Let me ask you another personal question. How do you, your family, your children, how do you feel when you're called Babar ki aulad? How do you feel when you hear the taunt Abba Jan? How do you feel when you're repeatedly told by usually members of the ruling party, go to Pakistan?
I'm not told only by the members of the ruling party to go to Pakistan. Every other day, when any write up of mine appears in the Hindu, there are readers who suggest that online. And many of them actually write to me because my email ID also accompanies many of the write ups. They say, if you have a problem living in India today, why don't you go to Pakistan? In fact, before you started your program here, there was one reader or one viewer, I should say, who had said, what about Hindus in Pakistan? Is that Muslims probably do not belong here? That is the idea. Personally speaking, I have had my share of those experiences. Once, a few years ago, maybe 2015 or 16, we were parking our car outside my office in Bahadur Shah Zafar Marg, and the parking attendant, I was in a hurry, I just left the key with him. The parking attendant, he called behind me, only half jokingly, saying, Saab, isme bomb to nahi hai. Now, he would not have said it to anybody else, but for the fact that I was visibly, manifestly a Muslim. And something like that happens regularly, whether you go to the airport where you are frisked more carefully than others, or if you are not manifestly Muslim, then things become a bit easier. But if you grow a beard, you wear a hijab, then the yardstick is different.
Finally, Zia, if you look at what Mohan Bhagwat has said, there is clearly an attempt to deny Muslims their identity and a second attempt, and forgive my crude colloquialism, to suggest to the rest of the country that Muslims deliberately breed like rabbits. I'm going to quote Mohan Bhagwat. Every Indian is a Hindu, he says. He accuses Muslims of organizing attempts to increase the Muslim population since 1930 for the community to become a dominant force. Earlier this year, he said, Hindustan is a Hindu Rashtra, and this is a fact. All those who are in Bharat today are related to Hindu culture, Hindu ancestors, and Hindu land, nothing other than these. These are statements that not only deny Muslims the right to an identity and to a culture that is specifically their own and Muslim, but as I said, it's an attempt to suggest to the country that you're deliberately increasing the population to dominate Hindus, something that is statistically impossible because there is no way 14.4% can ever dominate 79%. But how do you respond to these comments by someone like the RSS Sanchalak?
See, I don't respond to these comments, but I have a query. See, when Muslims, so to say, started ruling India, and I say it with a degree of, you can say, consternation or reservation, because whosoever ruled India was a king. His faith was largely incidental, and the battles any so called Muslim or Hindu king waged were political, meant for their own personal aggrandizement. But no Muslim king worked actively to increase the population of Muslims in the country. If it were so that was coercive conversion, then do you think Delhi Sultanate ruled from 1206 until the end of the Mughal Empire in 1847? India would have been a Hindu majority country today. 650 years of just one particular religion people ruling. People lived peacefully in harmony. Yes, there were stray cases of violence and so on in medieval India, but those were different norms. In modern India, which communities percentage of having children or procreation has come down more drastically than any other community is the Muslim community. We were having around 4.1% kids earlier, Muslim community, so to say, and now the gap between the Hindu families and the Muslim families has bridged drastically in urban India. When you talk of more children per family, it's an economic reality. A Hindu living in the rural part of the country who is not well educated, who is not well off, is more likely to have more than two children than a Hindu living, say, in New Friends Colony, Devcol, or Chanakyapuri today, who is well off and has a cushy job and everything. Similarly, a Muslim who is well educated is less likely to have more than two kids in comparison to a Muslim who lives in a remote village and is not well educated. You have to see this reproduction from the point of view of economy and education, not from the point of view of religion. And
Absolutely.
if
But
every Indian, as Mohan Bhagwat says, is a Hindu, then why are Muslims advised to go to Pakistan? And why does Mohan Bhagwat keep quiet about it?
that was the question I was about to ask. What does it feel like to a Muslim when he's repeatedly told, you're Hindu? An attempt to deny his faith and to deny the identity he seeks from his faith. What does it feel like when you're told your culture is Hindu, your land is Hindu, your ancestors are Hindu? In other words, cutting you off almost completely from your Islamic origins. What does it feel
That
like
is,
when you're hearing that?
this is part of the plan of the BJP. You see the way they have redone the history syllabus in schools. It's not that suddenly they've started giving more attention to Cheras or Pandyas or Cholas or even Pallavas, etc., as they deserve. It's just that all the good things which of medieval India concerning the Mughal Empire are being obliterated, are being erased from our history. If you read contemporary history textbooks of CBSE for our youngsters in 10th, 11th, 12th, it seems Mughal rule was an incidental thing lasting not more than 5, 10, 15 years. Whereas they ruled from 1526 to 1857 and they gave us the Red Fort, they gave us the Taj Mahal. Our Prime Minister deems it fit to address the nation from the Red Fort, but he won't speak a word against villainization of the Mughals in the country. The Taj Mahal gets us more revenue in comparison to any other monument in the country. Yet the contribution of Mughals is belittled. The idea is that Muslims should not have any heroes, any rallying point, any positive thing to say about their contribution to the nation. That's why we have these calls of Akbar losing the Battle of Haldi Ghati to Rana Pratap. It goes against all established facts of history. And if indeed Maharana Pratap had defeated Akbar, then we would have had the rule of the Rajputs and not the Mughals. The common man doesn't question these things. It is left to the historians, who, however, do a good job of standing up against deliberate erasure of some 500, 600 years of our history.
So far, I've painted a picture that is bleak and black. But as your book towards the end makes clear, there are clear shafts of light that are starting to penetrate the darkness. The first is the women of Shaheen Bagh. Your book devoted a full chapter to them. Briefly, why do you see hope in their defiance?
I guess every time there is an authoritarian government, every time dissent is punished, it's important to be defiant and to hail those who are defiant. In Shine Bagh, here was a classic case of women who had probably never even gone to the grocery shop in the neighborhood, who had probably not stood up for their own rights within their family also, going out to protect their life and limb, not for themselves, but for the larger community, the larger nation. When the Shaheen Bagh homemakers, the so called housewives, 75, 80, 90-year-old women, left the comfort of their house at night in the chilling winters of Delhi to come out to the streets of Delhi and have the Constitution of India in one hand and the Quran in the other. It spoke brilliantly, eloquently about our democracy, that the largest minority of the country, no matter what the challenges, what the adversities the community is faced with, is still reposing faith in the Constitution of India, is still desirous of life as an equal citizen of the country. The women of Shahin Bagh were reading the Quran, were offering their namaz every day at the protest site or going back home for namaz, but all the time holding up the tricolor, holding the Constitution of India. When most of us were celebrating the New Year on 31st December night in 2019, these women were standing shoulder to shoulder and singing Jan Gan Man. How beautiful is that? How moving is that? And therein lies hope that if not today, then tomorrow, the Muslim community will speak up and retrieve the idea of India.
The second shaft of light, and again, it's a very prominent chapter in your book, is the fact that Muslims are increasingly breaking free of the clutches of orthodox clerics, of the
Not a
fight
day too soon. Not a day too soon.
Absolutely. But of the fightbacks you write about, you say, and I'm quoting you, the masses, not the imams, called the shots. There was no space for imams and Maulvis and muftis. It was an assertion of secular Muslims who believed in the constitution of India and fought for their right as equal Indians. The community had not only lost faith in their so called leaders, but was in fact ready to leave them behind. Explain to the audience the significance and the importance of this particularly seminal moment.
See, in last 50, 60 years, 70 years, whatever you call it, the Muslim community has often been misled by the clerics. We have eloquent cases of Shah Bano verdict. We have the case of Babri Masjid case, and more importantly, we have the case of instant triple talaq, where many of the clerics kept arguing that instant triple talaq makes a marriage null and void, until the Supreme Court of India stepped in and quoted specific verses from Surah Baqarah of the Quran to say that yes, a marriage is nullified after three pronouncements, but there has to be a difference of at least one menstrual cycle between each pronouncement. It was a beautiful advertisement for our country, a pluralist democracy, when you have a five-judge bench quoting from the Quran, and only one of them was a Muslim, and the others were non-Muslim, quoting from the Quran to talk of the rights of a Muslim woman. Unfortunately, many of our imams and Maulvis had not deemed it appropriate to pick up the Quran and quote from it rather than quoting from other sources. But when you talk of the latest instance of two protests against Citizenship Act, amendment to the Citizenship Act, what was important was there was this congregation on a Friday at Jama Masjid, historic Jama Masjid in Delhi, where thousands and thousands of Muslim men and hundreds of Muslim women had gathered to protest against the CAA, and these namazis, these worshippers, got zero support from the imam of the masjid and from the imams elsewhere in the area for their protest against CAA. Instead, they got support from Chandrasekhar Azad Ravan, and the masses were after namaz. In namaz, they had prayed behind the imam. After namaz, the Muslim men and women were ready to walk behind Chandrasekhar Azad Ravan rather than walking behind the imam. The imam was left behind in a little room at the Jama Masjid while the Muslim masses moved around freely, holding the tricolor, holding the preamble of our constitution that spoke brilliantly about a community that knows the path ahead.
Finally, Zia, right at the end of your book, you write, and again, I'm quoting you, the night is still not over. It's dark, very dark still. Yet the tiniest ray of light seems to be coming through. It's early, but a new dawn may just beckon. That's a clear, if faint, note of hope. How confident are you it will grow?
It has to grow. There is no other way. Because if it doesn't grow, then India doesn't grow. India doesn't survive as a pluralist democracy. It's important for the Muslim community to get support from the majority community. The Muslims cannot take on the fascist powers alone. It's for all of us combined, whatever our religion, to stand up against this kind of governance, where the Constitution of India is sought to be changed, where the rights of an average citizen of India are not respected, where the faith of one community is deemed superior to the faith of someone else, is when our Hindu countrymen, our Christian countrymen, and Muslim countrymen and women, and Sikh countrymen and women, we all understand the gravity of challenge in front of us. Then we can fight this battle. But we can see, as you rightly pointed out, little shoots of hope emerging from our society. People are beginning to speak up against something like that. And the very fact that a book of this nature, being Muslim Hindu India, is out in public domain, speaks eloquently about the kind of country we want in future and the mistakes we have made over last few years.
It's a very unusual book. So let me end by an impromptu question I didn't intend, but it's come to my mind as you said your last answer. Did you have trouble finding a publisher willing to publish this book? It's a book that hits out not just at the Modi government, but it hits out at the sort of country we've become. It's therefore a book that will find many readers feeling a little upset and offended because it tells the truth in a very bold, blunt, blatant way. Did you have trouble finding publishers to accept
Personally
this?
speaking, it was difficult to write this book, honestly speaking, particularly those sections about Northeast Delhi, where I personally went and saw masjids being reduced to ashes, where Quran, the copies of Quran were lying in a heap. They had been burned down at that Maula Baksh Masjid. That cover of the book is from the Maula Baksh Masjid in Northeast Delhi. I found pages of the Quran almost reduced to ashes, and at one place only one little verse from Surah Hujurat was left, which I quote in my preface in the book: Allah sees all you do. And that was in the fitness of things, because I do believe, if not today, then maybe tomorrow in the foreseeable future, people who have wronged India, I am not saying people who have wronged Muslims or a masjid, people who have wronged India will be booked and meted out the punishment due to them. You talked of finding a publisher. Well, all I can say is HarperCollins has been brave, and they have supported me through and through with this book. They have been happy to promote it, and they've been happy to publish it.
Ziya Us Salam, thank you very much for talking to me.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Karan Thapar. Over the last few years, I hope you've been watching my program, The Interview on the Wire. During that period, I've interviewed doctors, politicians, businessmen, scientists, authors, and even the occasional Nobel laureate. For me, it's been exciting. I hope it's been enjoyable for you. But these, as you know, are tough times, and if this program is going to remain bold, independent, and sometimes even defiant, then I think we need your support. At the end of the day, it's a truism, but editorial independence is best defended by the viewers. So if you would like this program to remain the way it is, forthright, outspoken, and interesting, then would you consider supporting us? All you have to do is to click on the description at the bottom. But more than anything else, I hope you will continue to watch The Interview. Your viewership means an awful lot to me.